I bought a cheap titanium road bike frame, sight unseen from AliExpress. I gambled on the sizing. It cost more than I thought. It has some fairly fatal defects. That's not ideal. Ooh. But I built it up anyway, and here's the story. Oh, and it turned out not to be cheap after all. What the? So stick around for my top 5 fatal flaws in my mysteriously cheap not cheap titanium bike bought off of China. But first, how did we get into this mess? The rationale for buying, building, birthing this bike is convoluted, confusing, illogical, which coincidentally is the mission statement of this channel. It's something to do with needing to get my best bike off the indoor trainer, my trusty doors advancing towards the great scrap heap in the sky, and needing YouTube content. You're welcome. Dealing with those priorities in order. Briefly, I am a weak man, physically and mentally. I need my lightest, best fitting bike, the Trek Domain, available to do any distance, speed or amount of climbing that is not embarrassing. Also, I've got some upgrades I want to make. I can't really do any of that if I have to remove it from the trainer and my pain cave each time I need it. Hassle does not promote regular use. But I also need a bike permanently attached to the trainer, a full-time job, doggy and childcare responsibilities, and skyrocketing intolerance for inclement riding conditions requires the kicker at full pecker 24/7 52 365 531 8008. I perhaps see a Zwift ride bike in my future. In the meantime, we need a not domain. And I'm not putting my newish Ribble CGR on there. It's the most all-condition bike I have. I need it for the winter and the Derbyshire shit roads. I dallianced briefly with placing the trusty doors into indoor semi-retirement. The incompatible drivetrain and my inability to extract the bottom bracket put paid to that one, which made buying a titanium frame bike from China the only rational option. Choosing the correct size of bike frame is fraught at the best of times. Transplant it to the internet and drag it through the hedge of cross-lingual confusion and we have a recipe for much hilarity. Presumably I typed road bike frame into the AliExpress search box, saw the word titanium in the results and my chimp brain creamed itself, which I believe Steve Peters will cover in his next book. So it would be 55 Ride, from whom I'd be purchasing my next frame. We can assume I wasn't put off by the underwhelming claim that only one unit had been sold before, having identified a frame at a price that whispered, "Too good to be true?" ? I attempted to interpret the sizing chart. This involved an unscientific comparison with my known good Ribble CGR frame, both cross-referencing Ribble's own chart and wrangling the tape measure on the real-life article, and good old British guesswork. Disconcertingly, my pseudo-scientific rando analysis determined that I needed both the extra large, extra small, and somewhere in the middle size, all at the same time. My big regret when I originally bought the Trek Domain was going for the larger of the two suitable frames based on my bike fit. I still look like a child on their dad's bike. Smaller is proer, as no one quite puts it. Anyway, I held my nose and clicked the buy button on size 50. A maybe titanium monkey bike was on the way. Delivery followed the usual AliExpress pattern, monitoring a variety of logistics websites, trying to decipher the updates, wondering if the store I'd purchased it from actually existed. The frame was eventually dispatched and wendled its way around the globe. Then, with the global trade equivalent of a screech of disc brake, it stopped and remained stopped for a long time. Finally, I discovered why the delivery was held up. I needed to pay customs duties before the frame could be released and delivered. And, plot twist, the amount was, how you say, massive. How massive? £171.71 massive. I'll give the total costs of the fully built up bike at the end of the video. Hint hint, please stick around. In the meantime, safe to say that my import-export prowess has moved the project from the worth a gamble bucket into the expensive white elephant kennel, because I assume elephants live in kennels. Now the good thing about paying for stuff with the proceeds of this channel is that it feels like play money and I can hide it from my wife. So the customs cock punch was largely forgotten when the frame turned up in a remarkably small box. My initial inspection was satisfactory. It felt light and there were no obvious defects, with obvious doing a large job of work in that last sentence. I was concerned that the featherlight feel was because I really had gone overboard in speccing a smaller frame. But there was no going back. Someone was going to get a nice titanium road bike, even if it was one of my children. With the frame potentially being a bit pony, I wasn't going to shower it with expensive new components. I'd reuse and recycle where I could, harvesting the door's seat post, stem, fork and handlebars. I had to get a replacement saddle because the doors one looked dreadful. A £36.61 gamble on a 3D printed one happened. The wheels would be my existing Campagnola Zondas, demoted from my best bike by a couple of hunts. I said hunts. The group set also came from AliExpress and was mainly maybe Shimano Tiagra 10 speed. The idea being that I can share parts with the 10-speed 105 on my Trek, at least until that gets an upgrade. The only ring-stinging bling came in the form of a shiny blue Hope headset, because it seems I'm addicted to expensive blue Hope headsets. The build, which I won't cover start to finish, was without drama, other than it uncovered basically everything wrong with the frame. So let's get into my top 5 things wrong with my cheap but also expensive titanium bike frame bought from AliExpress with little or no thought and more than a little haste. Starting with number 1, the head tube being cock off. Well, you can see it. The bottom opening isn't straight, and no, this isn't a result of my ham-fisted headset installation. I don't think it will cause me a problem functionally. The steerer tube isn't impinged. It looks a bit naff though. Of more functional concern is issue number 2. I am 99% sure the cable guide on the underside of the down tube has been welded on the wrong way round. The incoming cable ends from the shifters have nowhere to seat into. Instead, they sit wedged against the backside of the guide. I've siliconed in some housing end caps to guide the bare cable coming out of the other side and basically keeping the drivetrain from exiting the chat. Hopefully someone in the comments will tell me that the guides are in fact correct and I'm doing something wrong. In the meantime, I'd classify the shifting performance of the bike as precarious with a side order of impending cable snap. Before we move on to fatal issue number 3, you might have noticed these fantabulous third-person riding shots. I filmed them with my Insta360 X4 camera, and Insta360 are the sponsors of this video. The X4 is the company's latest 360-degree action camera. Using these two lenses, the X4 captures hugely detailed 8K footage from all around, which I later frame into clips with the Insta360 app. Sometimes I even use AI. Until recently, most of my footage was taken with the camera at the end of the amazing disappearing magic selfie stick, which Imho Roffle TLDR looks great. But Insta360 has just released 2 brand new road bike mounts, which makes it even easier for me to secure eye-tickling shots from a variety of angles with minimal hassle. The bike computer mount sits stealth at the front of my cockpit. Attach the X4 and I get awesome footage of my gurning grille and dancing noodle legs. The new tail mount makes for great follow shots of my coal-fired mega buttocks. Mega buttocks sold separately. I bought the older X3 camera a while back and was already a big fan. I was delighted when Insta360 sent me the X4 and I'm pleased to report I'm getting an even better result. There's a full video on my X4 filming rig on the channel. If you want to pick one up and immortalise your favourite rides in digital celluloid, please do use my link in the description. And with that, let's get back to titanium frame fart number 3. There's very little clearance for the rear tyre against the seat tube. I think these are 25 or 28mm tyres and the gap is the diameter of a gnat's pube. It's made even more dicey by the chunky front derailleur hanger protruding out the back. So now it's a toss-up between a tyre blowout and a snapped gear cable as to what will cause the first breakdown. And if it does puncture, removing the rear wheel is slightly more cumbersome than usual due to issue number 4. Unless I'm in the midst of a months-long brain fart, I can't seem to extract the wheel without taking out the quick release skewer entirely. The nub, yes, that's what it's called, on the quick release can't get around the rear derailleur no matter how I massage it. Maybe I can get a mini nub. Until then, rather than quick, it's an average speed release skewer. Finally, in this rogues gallery of defects and confusions, number 5. The guides for the rear brake cable, which occupies cable housing all the way along, fine, requires zip ties, which seems a bit naff. Maybe there are dedicated clips that look tidier, but I've never heard of them. But then neither have the people taking the promotional shots on the AliExpress listing. It's functional, but, how you say, a bit shit. So how much has this white kennel-dwelling elephant cost me? I'll whistle through the math. This isn't Goodwill Hunting. Excluding the wheels and the fork, which I already had, but including my tactual pleasuring of His Majesty's government, the cost of this project was £908.49. If we call it 150 quid for those existing parts, mainly the wheels, we're talking £1,060, which is quite a lot for a shit bucket. But let's see, if the frame issues don't turn out to be fatal and it's still riding in a couple of years, maybe I'll upgrade it to bargain status. But talking of riding, how does it perform, you ask? Surprisingly well, I answer. I'm no bike reviewer. I've not ridden a lot of different models or bikes, but I like it. It feels nimble and responsive and fast, although that might be my quadri cannons on full chat. I'm sure this performance is partly down to weight. Without trying to save grams on the group set and other components, the Thai Little Pony comes in at, insert number on screen, kilograms, which compares favourably to my carbon frame Trek Domain, although less so since I upgraded to carbon wheels. Incredibly, despite subverting the laws of physics and morality, the gear changes are precise, the indexing is lob on, and it all sounds disconcertingly quiet. Obviously I'm concerned about longevity. The cable guide bodge is a broken cable in waiting. The proximity of the front derailleur band bolt surely risks rubbing and blowing the tyre. God damn it though, I like the way it looks. To the untrained eye, preferably without their glasses, standing 10 yards away, facing the opposite direction, it looks like a very smart bike. So what's next for this mighty steed? I'd consider switching to a 1x setup. Losing the front derailleur reduces cable snap risk by 50% and negates the need for the band from which to hang it. With unlimited funds, I could look to a fully electronic drivetrain and eschew use of the down tube guides entirely. But even using internet funny money, and with the promise of great content, it feels weird to spend a lot more money on this Cleveland steamer. So maybe, whilst I own an 8, I'll moor the bike to my Kicker indoor trainer, where erg mode reduces the need to change gear, and catastrophic cable failures won't be quite so catastrophic. And you can watch my videos on the Kicker and using Zwift here and here. They've turned out quite popular.